Yeah, good morning. What up? Trying to check some messages to see if I have any any commissions I need to start on. Let's turn that music off for one. All right.
Mormon and
ACA Discord, which I don't mention nearly often enough. As a reminder, this show is awesome not because of me. It's a little awesome because of Jim, but it's mainly awesome because of these people who are there working on the crew, behind the scenes, grabbing phone calls, screening calls, making sure the video's working, the audio's working, dealing with any tech issues that arise. They're the ones that make this show happen, and I am eternally grateful. Also, before we get to callers, so Jim's going to be in charge today, and Jim is going to be picking all the callers because I'm in that mood. But also, today is Jim's birthday.
It's not Jim's birthday.
Everybody out there should be grateful and appreciative and pleased to pass on a very happy birthday to Jim Barrows, who's joining me today. So,
Happy birthday, Jim Barrows.
Oh, not doing too bad. Just another day.
Just
and
another
some fun. Yeah, and so, and Matt did lay down a challenge to harsh his mellow. So,
I'm going to see what you can do. I don't think you can.
All right, well, we'll give it a shot. So you ready to get started?
I am ready. Bring it on. Ask me the question, Bridgekeeper. I'm not afraid.
Yeah, that's what they all said. All right, so Kel in Utah will be on. Yeah, and you are on. How's it going?
Wow, I didn't expect to get on first. Hey, doing great. Thanks. How are both of you?
Doing pretty good. Doing pretty good.
Doing all right. Hey, Kel.
Hey, so I have been listening to the experience for quite a bit. Well, I've been listening to it quite a bit for the last couple of months since I became an atheist. And I used to be Mormon, and most of my family still is. My younger brother, who I'm really close with, he wants to go on a Mormon mission, and I'm kind of in a bind because I obviously want to have a good relationship with him. I don't want to, damage that, but at the same time, having served one myself, I don't know, I feel like he's about to do something I would consider pretty unethical and that can really hurt a lot of people, and I'm really struggling to know how to kind of broach that topic with him. So I just wanted to run it by you guys and see what advice you have.
Well, what do you think is the most empathetic thing you could do for your brother?
Empathetic, did you say?
Yes, empathetic.
I think that the most empathetic thing I could do would probably be try and prevent him from, experiencing the same negative things that I did when I served a mission, and kind of the guilt that I still carry and about the things that I did and taught people, and that's kind of, I think that's the most empathetic thing. On the flip side, I also think that there's a good argument for recognizing that in his spot, he genuinely believes a lot of the stuff that he genuinely believes that going out is going to help people, and so I don't want to cause him pain either strain on the relationship by saying, hey, I know you think you're going out to help people, but this actually can cause a lot of damage to you and the people you interact with, and here's how and why.
So Kel, does your brother know that you're no longer a Mormon and are an atheist?
Yeah. That's actually part of what makes it difficult is since I told my family, I've definitely noticed I've lost a lot of credibility and kind of, I can't really say the same things or speak the same way that I could before without triggering a pretty big reaction from a lot of them. And he's not very confrontational, so he generally just kind of, if religion comes up, kind of goes like, well, I just want to, make sure everyone's getting along and, we'll talk about it later type thing, just kind of brushes it away type thing.
So if your brother still talks to you, he knows who you are, he knows that you're no longer a believer, he's not confrontational, I don't understand what the problem is, because it seems that you could just sit down with your brother and say, hey, before you go do this, and you need to follow your conscience and do whatever it is that you think is right, let me tell you how I feel about my mission, how I felt about it at the time, and why I feel that way, just so that you can go into this with eyes open and, make up your own mind. But if you find that your mission experience is vastly different from mine, I'd be interested in hearing that too. It's not like you need to take action to protect your brother from making mistakes. It's provide people with the information and let them know that there's someone there who cares to actually have the discussion with them and interact. And, okay, maybe he'll go on a mission, maybe he won't. Maybe his mission will be better because you've given him some information so he can keep his eyes open. Maybe he'll love it and be a Mormon forever. But your responsibility is not to protect people from doing things that you feel is a mistake as much as it is to provide them the benefit of your life experience and the encouragement and permission to go on and make the mistakes on their own. I've made a fuck ton of mistakes, and some of them people warned me about in advance.
Yeah.
Okay.
You just have to keep in mind what your end goal is. If you want to keep him as your brother, you've got to make sure you're supportive and that you're a good brother to him first, and an atheist second.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And by the way,
No, I think that's. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
so my brother is probably, I don't know if I even put the word probably there. My brother is my best friend on the planet. We don't interact as much as I do with some other people, but we are incredibly close. And he's been supportive and proud of everything I've done, even though we don't necessarily disagree on the religion subject, though we're agreeing on many things. At no point did I go to my brother and say, hey, you believe some really bad things, here's why. And I think you should do this, or I think you should do that. Instead, my brother knew from the get-go that I am always going to be his brother, and that he can talk to me whenever he wants, and we do. I mean, I talked to him today, actually, just a couple hours ago. And I love that. And there have been times where we had things that we disagreed about, and it was never a big enough issue. And there are plenty of things where we could have had serious disagreements and didn't, because we trust each other and we love each other.
Are you an atheist? Or do you have atheist relatives in your family who you just can't talk to? Like, my sister is wow, I don't know. Like Matt just said, his brother is his best friend. And like, is my sister my best friend? I don't know. My sister is like my sister. She's above a friend. Like, she is my lifeblood. My one connection to this fucking world, yo. Like, my sister means everything to me. And she believes in God, and I don't. But that does not have any effect on our relationship. Not a major effect on our relationship. Not from my point of view that she has ever expressed to me. Because me and my sister just talk normal and tell each other we love each other, and I don't know, I love seeing my sister and spending time with my sister, and I do it more so as a joke most of the time. Like, if I do bring up religion, like, we've had hard conversations. We've had in-depth, hard conversations on why I believe what I believe. And so my sister understands me and I understand her. And we've had this conversation years ago. And so now anytime like religion is brought up, more than likely I'm just making little silly jokes about it. And she's cool with it, and she just, my sisters don't question my religion and don't, say that shit to me. And she just brushes it off. Like, she called me matter of fact, she called me yesterday morning. And I'm like, yo, it was good. And she was with our other sister, and I'm like, so what are you guys doing? And they're like, oh, we're at church. I'm like, at church, really? How the fuck you FaceTiming me from church? Oh, the church service ain't started yet. So y'all niggas just get to church hella early so y'all can have enough time to FaceTime people and do all kind of stuff. But that's my family. My family still goes to church religiously on Sundays and have their prayer meetings and whatever else they do in church. I don't know. Tithes and offerings and all that shit. Giving up 10% of your earnings to the church. A bunch of wild ass shit, yo. Right. And for the most part, my entire family is still religious. But there are like pockets of my family that I can talk to openly and freely without being like looked down upon or hated on or some shit or motherfuckers trying to pray for me or whatever. But there are some family members who I just know like, we're not gonna have a conversation on religion or spirituality or the belief in a God. Like we're not gonna go there. Like I said, I've talked about it with my sister, and there's one of my uncles, my favorite uncle. Me and him can talk about that shit all the time. And he's an older gentleman, so I don't know. He's told me like he's questioning things back and forth. Getting later in life, understanding his mortality, and knowing that we're not gonna be here forever. You know what I'm saying? Sooner or later, you're gonna have to look death square in the face. And so he says he's contemplated. Like, is there a God? Is there no God? Is this a simulated um, experience? Are we living in a hologram? Is there like are we living in like some multi-dimensional universe or whatever? And he says he's questioning all kind of things. But I don't know. I don't see the point. And once again, I have not been convinced to believe this shit. Hmm. So, my one viewer, are you a believer? It's a yes or no question. It won't hurt you to type yes or no. And if you're a believer, I get it. It's weird. Like the world is becoming more and more secular, but religion is everywhere. Every culture, every society has some type of creator God, some original beginning story of how things got started. And it's almost like honestly, it's harder for us not to believe just because something in our psyche, something in our subconscious wants us wants us to believe that there is something greater than ourselves out there, something that is more than human, something that is all knowing and all understanding. It's like that's the whole idea of a Superman, and that's where I mean all these great myths of super beings come from. Because it's like humans can do a lot, but what if we could do more and be a superhuman? And then once you go past being a superhuman, then you're on a god level, a creator. Aye. And so I don't know. Would that be a reason for it to permeate so many cultures throughout different eras and periods of human history that we always find ourselves looking towards some type of creator deity to explain like where we came from? But then that's the one thing too. We keep running into these roadblocks where there is no real explanation. Like we can't trace it back far enough to be like, okay, this is a fact. We can't do it with religion. We can't do it with science. It's like we're just kind of fucking stuck, yo. And left to our own assumptions. Well, not merely assumptions, because by measuring the physical world uh, using the scientific method to understand our reality, we can come to some conclusions. No matter how minor they may be, we can come to some conclusions because uh, things are repeatable. And if we can perform an experiment multiple times and get the same outcome, and then it becomes a reliable source of information that we can document. And so, yeah, we can weigh and measure a lot of things and quarks and atoms and photons and look over the cosmic or try to find a cosmic horizon and trace the blue shifting light back to the original source of the Big Bang and all this other shit. But then, like, we still hit this fucking brick wall where it's like, all right, so now what? There possibly may have been some type of uh, catalyst event that produced what we know as space, time, and matter. But then what was before that? And then people say God. And then you say, okay, well, where did God come from? And they're just like, oh, God is infinite. God always was. God always is. And then it's just like, psh, these brick walls keep coming back, yo. So if you're gonna like believe it, you just, I don't know, either way you believe, it's almost like a faith-based thing, but not really for science. Science says we'll keep studying and keep trying to learn until we understand. And if you can show us a better way of examining the evidence, then we'll do that shit. Religion says, well, I'm gonna believe this because this is what I feel to be true. And it's hard to go on feelings, yo.
We know that we can be open and honest with each other. That's far more important to me than whether or not my brother believes in a God.
Okay.
You know where your brothers are being sent?
Yeah, no. Yeah, he's going to California. So, fortunately.
He's doing his mission at Disneyland.
Yeah. I encourage you to go see Disneyland.
So I hate to say this, Kel. Have you seen the Book of Mormon the musical?
I've started watching it in pieces, and it's pretty funny.
Yeah.
I haven't watched all the way through yet, though.
Yeah, it's funny.
But yeah, encourage him to go do some things and to experience California as well as do his mission. mean, it's not like California is lacking in things to do or places to see that are relatively unique and fun. So, whether that's, Disneyland, Knott's Berry Farm, Magic Mountain, I'm forgetting bunches, I'm sure, beaches.
I'm waiting for the Mormon church to send the mission group, like, directly to my house. Or, once the Backstreet Boys reunion tour is over, directly to the Atheist Community of Austin building to come down and, it's not all that impressive to send, Mormons out to just randomly talk to people who don't know anything at all about religion, especially their quirky religion.
Mm-hmm.
So why not send them to people who know? Why not have them, like, I do a lot of work with Jimmy Snow on the Line Network. Why not just have them all come talk to Jimmy, who's a former Mormon, or a foreman, as I like to call him.
Yeah, it's a good question. I actually think that part of that is the tricky part about it is that it's not quite as severe as you might see, and from what I understand from like Telltale Atheists and some others about Jehovah's Witnesses, but there is definitely a bit of like a shunning culture in Mormonism to the point that, Matt, you kind of mentioned, like, hey, maybe offer just to say, hey, here's some of the good and the bad and the whatever I learned from my mission. If you go, then this will help you have a better one either way, and if you don't, then whatever, great. And when I actually left the Mormon church about 6 months ago, and previous to leaving, I had actually had that conversation with him because he was filling out his papers and getting ready to go and all that. I was like, hey, let's get lunch and I'll talk to you, give you advice, stuff like that. And he was all for it. But then when he found out that so that happened before I left. And then when I told him a few weeks later, he texted me, he's like, hey, I know that I said that we should sit down and get, lunch and talk about mission, but I'm not really sure if I'm comfortable with that right now, kind of between the lines because you left. And so that's kind of going back to what I said at the beginning, where I feel like kind of my credibility and my whatever in general with him and my family is kind of under question, at stake a little bit, and things that
then you need to stop.
Be totally normal.
The most important thing you need to do right now is to respect other people's boundaries, because there's going to come a time when you're going to want them to respect yours. And so if they're aware that you're willing to have these conversations, and you don't have to remind them of it every day. But if somebody tells you that they're not comfortable having that conversation, or they're not comfortable having that conversation yet, all you have to do is say, that's fine. I want you to know I'm willing to talk about it whenever you are comfortable, if you ever get there. And that's it. Anything else runs the risk of coming across even more preachy than they're likely to be.
Yeah.
All right.
And if you're going through the angry atheist phase, it's even doubly hard, right?
Yeah. One more thing, what?
No, for sure. Yeah, sorry, one clarifying question on that, and then I'll let you get on to the other callers. So the kind of ethical bind I felt comes, specifically, for example, like teaching illegal immigrants about the church, and then telling them that in order to join, they had to be legally married, and that they would have to leave the country to go get legally married back in their country of origin, and then come back, right? Like, just this wacky, crazy stuff that's functionally translated into, like, you need to rip your family apart, potentially go back to a dangerous country, and, like, do all this just so that you can come and be part of my Jesus club. Or, telling LGBTQ people, oh, hey, you're not truly gay, you just suffer from this mental whatever, and if you pray hard enough, right, you're going to be better. Like, some really awful, disgusting stuff that I feel terrible about now, and I don't.
The thing is,
it's kind of one of the things where I'm like, yeah.
The thing is, you can take action. You can take action, and you can actively, publicly, robustly speak out against every single thing you're pointing to without ever talking to your brother or whoever else about it if they don't want to at all. You can inform the public about this stuff and work towards changing it. It's not your brother isn't the problem here. It is the beliefs and positions that he holds that are sanctioned by the church, and you can challenge those directly and openly without having that conversation with your brother.
Yeah. And until you repair your relationship with your family and you kind of get over this awkward period, you're not going to be able to talk to them about anything about this. I mean, you need to kind of, repair that rift a little bit before they can assume that you're talking, remind them that you're still the same person you were before they found out you were an atheist. And then you can kind of move from there. But until you're back on that kind of ground, it's going to be difficult, I think, to actually talk to your family about any of that.
So if I understand kind of what you're both saying, there might be some sort of maybe ethical responsibility to push back against the unethical things I see, but the most effective route isn't necessarily, hey, brother, don't do this. It might just be, advocating for it in my own life, however I can, and then repairing kind of family relationships, and then if and when they're ready to talk and open to it, talking about it then. Is that kind of what I'm getting from you both?
Yeah, I think it's a fair summation.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair. The key thing is, you don't have to change or fix or argue with your brother to work towards educating people about problems with Mormons, and especially with Mormon missions and the very objections that you raised. I didn't have conversations with my mom for many years about religion. And yet every single week, or almost every single week, I was on this show having those conversations with the people that wanted to, the people that call in. We don't make outgoing calls on the show. I generally don't go looking for people to have an argument with. I wait for the arguments to come to me.
Yeah. Okay. Well, hey, this is exactly what I was kind of hoping for. You guys have given me a lot to kind of think about, and I really appreciate it, and it's, I think it's helping me feel a little better about the situation, just, kind of having that objective third party kind of look at it, and, I like kind of the idea, too, of, hey, you know what, you can still fight for change and improve change, and, just focus on the most effective way of doing that, and that doesn't necessarily have to be tracking your brother down. It can be, there's a lot of other ways to do that, so, anyway, I appreciate it a lot, and thank you both.
Great. Thanks so much.
Good luck.
Yeah. Hey, have a good one, guys. Keep it up.
Yeah, family is always hard. And especially if you're in that angry atheist phase where you're just kind of reeling at everything you used to believe and you're trying to wrap your head around it and all that, it can be very, very difficult to deal with family under those circumstances.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I understand what some people are going through, and yet I can't fully understand what others are going through, because we've heard from teenagers who've been kicked out of their parents' home because they don't share those beliefs anymore. We have to find a way to relocate them. I have family members who've said and done, terrible things to other people.
Yeah.
Whereas, despite the problems that I've had, I'm still on good terms with my parents. I called my dad to wish him happy birthday 12 days ago. And we still have conversations, and yet family's a weird thing.
Yes.
Because what you're really saying is, by and large, I'm related to these people, either through blood or some legal interaction. And that puts us in a position where, for some reason, we have to get along even if we don't. Even if we don't sometimes like each other. And I pretty much have said no to that. Jen Peoples repeatedly pointed out that your family when you act like family, and that she doesn't care if you're blood related or legally associated or not. And so there are people in my life who I count as family. And there are people who I'm legally and by blood related to who I don't count as family anymore. And it's all because the first priority is to make sure that my life isn't full of toxic relationships and people who are trying to fix me at every corner rather than having the conversation. And similarly, yeah, and that's what I was saying. Similarly, the guy that just called, you shouldn't be the toxic influence on your brother's life. Just be a good person and a good brother. Have the conversations when you have the opportunity.
Yeah. All right. So, Alan Pullen wants to talk to us about how AXP is going to help transition people becoming atheists. Hey, Al, how's it going?
I'm doing very well.
Excellent. So you wanted to talk about how this show helps people transition to being atheists?
Well, okay, so if I could give you some short, brief background. I was raised in a Lutheran family in Sydney, Australia, taken to church at
Yo, this is crazy. What the fuck?
Is that you a bad motherfucker? Go ahead and do that shit. If that shit in you, go.
He's a man. There's some lights flicker, I swear to God. It's an Asian guy in his 20s from what the comments are saying.
Yo! Dude is bugging. That's crazy. Headline says, happening now. Man dangling from Trump Tower in Chicago, threatening to cut the rope if he doesn't speak to Trump. Yo, he put out a video. Where's this video at? Yeah, let me see this video.
Hello everyone. I'm a member of Black Lives Matter and I want to talk with Mr. Trump before the election. I don't want to die. If someone will try to pull this rope, I will jump and die. I have a knife. If someone will try to pull, I will cut it and I will probably die. But I don't want to die. And I don't want world to be end. If Mr. Trump something he should do before the election. And why I'm here? I'm here in Chicago. Chicago is one of the most liberal city in the world. And I really respect people who live here. Why? Because
Yo, this dude just said, I am a member of Black Lives Matter. But are you really?
I'm a member of Black Lives Matter and I want to talk with Mr. Trump before the election. I don't want to die. If someone will try.
Wow.
make a decision, big decision. For that, I want to talk with media, and I will say what I want to say for media. Everyone who knows me, they know I'm not crazy. I'm not crazy. I'm well-educated guy. But if Mr. Trump, if you think I am crazy, I'm not a crazy. And if you will talk with me, I will cut and I will die. But this will be in your responsibility. So, guess what? Please send media here. I will say what I want to say, and after that, I will leave. I don't want to die.
Every Sunday, but I started having doubts when I was 7, and by the time I was 10 or 11, I was able to tell my parents, "Hey, I don't believe in this anymore," and I've embraced science and things like that since then.
How'd your parents react?
I know, because it was so easy for me. But how difficult must it be for some people who spend a large part of their life believing to change, to transition?
Well, it depends on the person. I mean, for me, it was, I can't actually point to the day or even necessarily the year that I stopped believing. I estimated 10 to 15 years ago, but, I can't actually point to one thing. We have other hosts on this show who can point to a day and a moment even. So, and I know people who, a lot of people in the NCAA who are friends of mine who are in that same boat. They can point to specific things, or some of them are a little bit fuzzier, but and some came, more roundabout ways. So it can be very, very difficult depending on your background. It can be one of the most difficult things you do because you're going to turn your back on family. And I have friends who are atheists who have had to do exactly that. Who can have no more contact with their family because it's so toxic, and they kind of knew that before it happened. So it depends.
I understand that, but how old were you when you kind of identified as atheist?
Between my 30s and 40s.
Same here.
Yeah. So that's actually interesting for me because I was a child and I went, hey, this is all stupid. But
yeah, if I would have been 7 years old and told my parents it was all stupid, not only would I don't know how much I would have gotten, like a spanking or what sort of punishment there would have been, but there would have been punishment, and my ass would, well, you couldn't really have me in church any more than I was, because I was there Sunday morning, Sunday night, Monday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night, and all kinds of stuff. So I was in church all the time. But if I had said that, there's no way my parents would take it well. And so you have to recognize that anyone who at 7 years old can just tell their parents, this religion stuff's nonsense, I don't want anything to do.
But, in that aspect, I'm very, very similar to this caller because where's my tripod is in the hallway. All right, let me grab this. Now this caller said he was 7 years old when he told his parents, like, I do not believe in this religion. This thing called religion you're trying to teach me. And I didn't believe in it when I was 7. I just didn't have the courage to verbalize that or to actually say that to anyone. And I'm just like him. Like, it takes some people 20 years, 30 years not to believe. It takes some people 40 years, 50 years not to believe. And then some people will believe their entire life without ever questioning that shit. And I don't know, for me, and just like Matt said, I was in the church. I was in church like all the time. And that shit never like sunk in, yo. It never like took a hold of me. And it's never made sense. And I don't think I've ever really believed in any of it. I thought it was all like hocus pocus, magic, fairy tale type shit. And so I was 13 when I said something. I can always, that's one of the most memorable days of my life, yo. But I wasn't 7. But by the time I was 13, I was just like, I had to say something, like, because to me, the shit didn't make sense. And it was like, is this your entire life? You're basing your entire life off of this weird ass fucking story. Like I say, from early on, I was just like, nah, nope, that shit don't sound right. That's not fun. So back to the very unexciting, painting of the books. And it's crazy because you guys have to get almost so close to even see what I'm doing at all. I said I was straightening out some lines, but these shits look still a little wobbly as hell to me. Let's see if we can do a little better.
Do with it, and their parents are okay with that, already probably weren't in a pretty religious environment to begin with.
Oh, hold on. Because 7 was when I got my first doubts, and I told my parents when I was 10 that I didn't want to go to church anymore.
Everything that I just said about doing it at 7, everything that I just said about doing it at 7 would have been true at 10 as well.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, it would have been true at 17.
However, let's say someone, I don't know how to actually put this, but someone who has based his existence or his or her existence on that something will live on after you die and things like this, to be confronted by the nothingness, it has to be difficult. I count myself extremely lucky. And
it can be difficult.
The call screener is, does this program help? Sometimes, if you don't mind me saying, Matt gets a bit aggressive.
Really? We hadn't noticed.
Someone who wants to change.
In 15 years, you're the first person to mention that. Thanks for letting me know.
Yeah. And you would be surprised, I think, if you go back and listen to this show's entire back history, and listen to the number of people who say, hey, this show actually helped me over the last 20 some odd years, you would be surprised. If you had access to our email, you'd be even more surprised. If you were to show up at the library when COVID goes away, you would be surprised at how many people show up there and are making, for lack of a better word, a pilgrimage to the show and to watch it live, because that's what changed their lives for the better. So I think you'd be surprised at the number of people. What we don't hear from as much, or if at all, is the number of people we may completely turn off of atheism because of any one host's approach, whether it's Matt's or mine or Jenna's or Jen Peoples or any former host or any current host. We're only going to reach a certain number of people, and we can do what we can do. And if it's not AXP, maybe it's the line. Maybe it's watching a debate that happened 10 years ago that happens to be on YouTube. Maybe it never happens. But we're only going to reach so many people, and we do reach people. So
the other thing is that while I don't pretend that I get it right all the time, I think the overwhelming majority of the time when people want to claim that I'm aggressive, I think it's justified. I think that when you get people in here, see, some of the confusion is that, like, let's say someone calls in and they're trying to defend a biblical notion of slavery, which happens all the time, and they are dishonestly representing what the book says, or they've called in to tell me I'm wrong. Like, literally last week, somebody called in to tell me I was wrong. And if you tell me I'm wrong, you better fucking bring your A game. And in this case, what we find out, hang on. What we find out is that I wasn't wrong. And the times when people are like, oh, Matt's angry, generally, nobody's ever seen me angry on the show. There are only a handful of people who have ever seen me truly angry in real life. I'm pretty laid back, but I value the truth, and I value honesty in argument. And if you think that when I'm talking to, let's say, a Christian apologist on the phone, that I'm trying to change their mind, and that when I get irritated, this runs counter to them changing their mind, the mistake that someone has made is assuming that I'm trying to change that person's mind. I'm not. I'm trying to change the mind of the thousands of people sitting at home who agree with that person, who don't want to be publicly embarrassed for believing ridiculous and immoral things. And so I'm not doing it for the caller's benefit. I'm happy if the caller changes their mind. But I'm doing it for the people watching at home. And anybody can complain and say, oh, I have a better way. You should do your show this way because it's better. I ask them the same thing. What data do you have? Because I have 15 years worth of data of doing this show and showing what works and what doesn't work. And have thousands upon thousands of minds changed to the point where there's not an event that I can go do where there aren't a dozen people walking up to thank me and the atheist community of Boston for putting forward the content that helped them change their lives. So I'm not all that interested in the tone trolling or tone policing, because at no point am I saying that my way is the only way, or that my way is the right way, or that I should only do things a certain way. As a matter of fact, I think I've done things about every possible way someone could, and it's worked.
Okay, I really was there to ask a question, but I suspected that you were going to say it was for the listeners' benefit rather than the caller's benefit that you argue with them. However, just as a side issue, have you ever thought, because I have, what is the motivation of the people who call in to argue for a theistic point of view?
They have different motivations. They don't all call for the same reason. Some of them are calling in because they're convinced that I'm wrong and working for Satan and that I need to be exposed. Others are calling in because they have genuine doubts and curiosity and want to engage in conversation. You can't sum everybody up and dump them all in one bucket.
I didn't want to do that.
I wasn't saying you did. Sorry, let me rephrase that. One can't or shouldn't dump everybody into a bucket. There are lots of different reasons people call.
Okay, cool. I often think that some people ring up to argue for God because, in fact, they doubt what they actually are trying to say.
I literally just said that.
Yeah. more time on each call, we could probably get into people's motivations.
Saying hello about the atheists in Poland. Love the show.
Great.
And the snooker invitation is still on, Matt.
Yeah, cheers. Thanks, Al. I'd love to do that. I played some snooker when I was in London last. But yeah, if I get to Poland, I'd be happy to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Alex.
It's a strange thing that it's an interesting question. What is the motivation behind the person who called?
Yeah.
The problem is, I don't know that we are in any position to find out what that motivation is. If someone tells me, I called because you're wrong and I want to prove it, I'm just going to take them at their word. And if they called and said, I'm calling because I'm curious and I'm having doubt, I'm just going to take them to word because I can't actually read people's minds. And if I were to ask someone, what is your like if we had call screeners who at the end of a call came in and said, please tell us your thoughts about how that call went with our host and what was your reason for calling? How do you know that you're getting the truth? And while it's psychological curiosity and something I'm genuinely interested in, I'm more interested in the substantive calls that get to the truth of reality.
Right. And the person themselves may not know exactly what their primary motivation was for calling. They may just felt like calling that day and talking about a topic. So
yeah. There wasn't any football on. I was bored.
Yeah. All right. So next up is going to be, if I could hit the button, Alvin in North Carolina wants to talk about the theory of biblical patterns.
Before we do that.
Oh, he's on.
Okay, Alvin, you're on, but let me make a quick announcement because I didn't want to interrupt you for this. So as soon as I'm done with this, Alvin can go ahead. By the way, we had a board meeting recently, and one of the things that we discussed is that we provide community service funds to help homeless people get bus passes and things like that. And as such, you remember, Jim, what the percentage of we were currently, I know what the money was. I know how many thousands of dollars of bus passes it was, but it was only a portion of the homeless community that was getting this service.
Yeah. It was a small portion, and we're providing most of the bus passes.
I don't
remember what it was. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't ever want to be in a position, where it looks like, we're doing a show every week asking for more money and more money and more money. Except that it's true that all of your donations go to us and it all goes to good causes. But I wanted to point out that we have donated thousands of dollars, many thousands of dollars over the past couple of years to get bus passes to homeless people. And we are trying to expand that effort. And so as we've got the donation link up there. There are other ways that you can contribute. We appreciate all of that. And a good portion of what you donate is going, what was it, like $6,500 or something just the other day?
It was.
Yeah. And so we are giving back to our community as best we can. And we can only do that with your help and support. And so I just want to make sure that everybody who's donating, we're all, Jim and I are all volunteers here. We don't get a penny of this. This is going to the organization with good causes, working with other organizations as well. So anyway, I apologize for derailing that. I just realized I forgot to announce it at the top of the show. So Alvin in North Carolina, thanks. You're on with Jim and Matt.
Yes, I had talked to you, Matt, and Jenna a couple weeks ago about the theory of biblical patterns, and Jenna asked me if I had looked in the Quran, which at the time I had not, and since then I have looked in the Quran, and that's the reason I called back.
Okay. And what is this theory of biblical patterns, if you could, because I wasn't there for that call?
Oh, okay. Well, very quickly, there's 100 patterns in Genesis 1:1 that are beyond chance and beyond mortal capability, and
so how real quick,
get there?
Well, my first question is how do you know it's beyond chance? And in what language did you study this?
Math.
Okay, you've done the math.
Different
What language?
That's rather curious because if somebody's done the math and shown what the actual logic, then if you can do the math, then by definition it is not beyond chance, because you have to have some chance of it happening, and you've calculated how likely it is. So it seems to me disingenuous to say, oh, we did the math and it's beyond chance. That's not accurate.
And did you do it in the original language, or did you do it in English? And if you did it in English, did you do it against all
Ain't doing too much weight training right now.
interpretations of the Bible and come up with the exact same answer?
Yeah, I did it. I looked at several different languages, and Matt, you're correct. It's not beyond any chance. It's beyond more than a couple deviations. But
So what you're really saying?
Barely.
So what people are really saying, Alvin, is not that it's beyond chance. It's just that it seems to them that it's incredibly unlikely for this to happen without divine intervention.
Yes, or ET, or some higher intelligence.
Can you give us? So you've said
beyond Earth.
You said both previous week and this week that there were 100 patterns in Genesis 1:1, right?
Yes, yes. Well, there's lots of different ways of looking at Genesis 1:1. You can look at values and the places. Okay.
So, which version of the Bible should I be looking at for us to talk about the patterns in Genesis 1:1?
The original Hebrew.
The original Hebrew.
Yes.
Do you have a copy of the original Hebrew? Because you'll be the only person on the planet who has an original copy of anything in the Bible.
Well, yeah, I understand what you're saying. It's been through a lot of iterations, but I'm basically just talking about the first verse. So,
sure.
In various places in the Bible, there are questions of which letter, but I'm just talking about the first verse. Only the first 7 words.
Still messed that shit up.
7 words. How would you determine how many different ways those 7... How do you get 100 patterns in 7 words? That's what I want to know.
That's the main thing, bro. I just hope it heals right and I don't have a fucking limp or nothing.
I mean, it's things like, I
tore my Achilles tendon, yo. I had to have surgery to get that shit put back together. But it's a really common injury. Normally for athletes. Wow. I'm in a little bit of pain right now. Shit. But, yeah, they said maybe 12 weeks recovery time. And I should be able to be walking normal. And then about a year. In about a year, I should be back to full strength, like nothing ever happened. But I would definitely have to watch that ankle because of the high chances of re-injuring it, just because it's already injured. So it's just one of them things. I've said that a couple of times already, yo. Like, fuck, I missed the gym already, bro. And this shit is only a couple weeks old. Like, literally happened like 2 weeks ago. I had my surgery. I just had surgery on Friday. And so now I got like 11 weeks of this shit to go. And it's just like, I just want to get better faster so I can go back to the gym. I have some weights at home, and I did a little bit of like upper body training, and I can't really lift. I have to lay down and lift. I can't stand up and lift anything. I can't really squat or lunge or put any kind of weight on my feet. So I'll just try to work my shoulders and biceps and my pecs for the next couple weeks until I can start back lifting from my feet, yo. Fucking sucks. After I leave out of the studio this morning, I'll probably go do a couple of reps real quick. Some I can't even like do push-ups or nothing.
And the number of words, the number of letters. If you take there's 28 letters, so if you take the 28 places, you find it in pi, and now a lot of it has to do with the factors of the value, which is 37 and 73. That's where a lot of the patterns come from.
What was the website? Because I found a theory of biblical patterns, but not. What was the website?
Theoryofbiblicalpatterns.com.
The theory of biblical.
That doesn't even come up in the first couple of for.
Okay, that redirects me to the Bible and the Bible.com.
Yeah, it's the same website. Well, okay, now at the top there's just 20 verses that says there are patterns in the Bible. But if you click on, well, I don't have it in front of me, but if you click on patterns.
Is this your website?
Patterns.
Is this your website? Because I noticed there's something here that says Atheist Experience 10/4/2020, and atheist is spelled wrong. Is that just another pattern of Atheist Experience to spell it wrong?
Oh, no, I guess I made a mistake when I wrote it again. No, that's just that. Okay, 2 weeks ago when I talked to you, I added a web page just reflecting what I had found in the last 2 weeks. And if you click on that link, that's what you'll find. There's like a couple hundred classic books that I've looked at, in the Quran and in Arabic and English and so forth. Well, all my results are on that page. If you click that link, that's what you'll find. But I didn't know I misspelled it.
Yeah, every single time.
Yeah.
You've misspelled the word atheist every single time that I see. It's on the link. But I'm not, this isn't a spelling exam, except that if you're saying that there's 7 words and 100 patterns, I'm still trying to figure out. I looked at the website. I've listened to what you say. I don't mean to be a dick, but the website is a confusing hot mess that doesn't present any information clearly, because within the first page you say Dr. Roger Penrose said the universe is fine-tuned to 10 to the 10th to the 123rd, greater than 10 to the power of a googolplex, a multi. True, and has nothing to do with patterns or anything else. It's like you found some big numbers and made decisions that, you found a pattern that seems like it's unlikely. I'm trying to figure out what's the pattern.
Oh, well, you're right. There's other stuff on the website, but
Okay, I'm looking at Genesis 1:1. You say there's 100 patterns in Genesis 1:1. Please describe one pattern, and then if that's clear, describe a second pattern so I can know what the heck you mean. I genuinely, I'm trying to be awful. I have no idea what you mean by saying there's 100 patterns in Genesis 1:1. There's 7 words in Genesis 1:1.
Well, okay, the easiest ones are there's 7 words. 3 and 7 are like the most important digits.
Says who?
7 is by far.
Says who?
Well, it's in the Bible. I mean,
I don't care what the Bible says. If the Bible says 7 is important, that doesn't mean that 7 is important.
No, but you find 3 and 7 together, 37 and 73.
Yes, you find 3s and 7 all over the place. I remember being in church and having the pastor talk about how my body is repeatedly divided into thirds. I have a head, I have a torso, I have legs. My arm has a hand, a forearm, and an upper arm. My fingers have 3 joints. You can find 3 all over the place. But you know what else you can do? You can find 2, because I have a left half and a right half. I have a left ear and a right ear, a left eye and a right eye, a left nostril and a right nostril, a left arm and a right arm. You can find any sort of number, especially the smaller ones that are likely to repeat, almost anywhere. I want to know give me a pattern in 1:1, and why we should care about it.
Well, probably one of the maybe easier to understand is the one I mentioned before, pi, e, and alpha. There's a 1 in 100,000 chance that any given number would be any 5-digit number, and Genesis 1:1 creates pi, which is 1 in 100,000.
How does Genesis 1:1 create pi?
Well, let's see. The letters times the factor of the letters over the words times the factor of the words, or the multiple of the words. So that's what
Okay.
you use. But you get the same thing.
When you said you get pi, do you get 3.14, or do you get 3.14 that just keeps on going forever, and I forget what the next 1,000 digits are, although people have calculated it out to 10,000. When you say it creates pi, have you checked to the same degree of accuracy that people who have calculated pi out to thousands of digits, or are you just saying it's 3.14? Because that's not pi.
No, it's just it's the first 5 digits, so it's 1 in 100,000.
That's not pi.
And the same thing where John...
3.14 or 3.14 to the first 5 digits is not pi.
Correct. It is an approximation of pi.
But it is not pi.
Yeah, well, yeah.
But so let's say that Genesis 1:1. So first of all, let's go ahead and you and I can agree, Alvin, that if you take the words or the letters in Hebrew letters in Genesis 1:1, which are also numbers, that you can perform some sort of mathematical manipulation on it and wind up with pi or first 5 digits of pi. Right? That's what you're saying.
Yes, exactly.
Now, so irrespective of whether we can do that anywhere else, which I would argue that we absolutely can, and even when you look at it and you're like, oh, it's that to 100,000 or 1 to 100,000, what does that mean? To find that you can do some sort, like the Bible doesn't tell you what mathematical calculation to do. And so if somebody sits around with a bunch of numbers, like a random string of 10 characters, 10 numbers, and a goal that they're trying to get to. Have you ever seen the show Countdown from the UK?
No.
It's brilliant. And I would recommend that when you go watch Countdown, you should start with the regular Countdown and do not watch 8 out of 10 Cats does Countdown. But Countdown is a game that's played in kind of 2 rounds. One of them, you get a sequence of English language consonants and vowels, and you have to create the longest anagram out of those, that random assortment that you can. The other one is that you pick a handful of a handful of numbers of different values, and then a random number pops up on the screen, and you have to, through calculation, combine the numbers that you were given to reach the total that is at the top of the screen as close as you can. Now, there are some occasions where it just can't be done. That there's no amount of calculation that you can use given the strictures and the rules. Obviously, they don't allow factorial and all that stuff. But just using plain mathematics, sometimes, very rarely, there are things that you cannot get to the goal. But the rest of the time, you can. And it happens over and over and over again. Now, if we have a game show where people sit down and are given a random sequence of numbers and a random number to target, and they consistently, through basic math, reach that total, why is it remotely impressive that you found pi, or the first 5 digits of pi, through your random calculation? It's not random. You get to choose when you multiply, when you divide, when you add and subtract. And your entire process of determining what the calculation is, your entire process is based on what you find at the end. And so if you did multiply, divide, plus, minus, boom, 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 and you ended up with 4.2897, well, you'd say, well, that's not a non-result. But on those occasions where you get like 3.141592, then you say, this is significant. It's like dealing out a hand of cards. If you dealt the cards a full deck so that each person has 13 cards, what are the odds that someone would get all 13 spades?
Well, pretty low.
Yeah, it's really, really low. It's 1 in... the odds of getting 13 cards of the same suit are 1 in 158,753,389,900. That's the odds. And yet, it has happened because people play bridge and people have had perfect bridge hands, which require getting that particular combination. And it's happened more than once where someone's gotten a perfect bridge hand. 1 in 158 billion, despite the fact that there probably haven't been anywhere near that many games of bridge played. And so that's really unlikely. and yet it happens. Right?
Yes.
But what if instead of getting 13 cards of the same suit, you got a different set of 13 cards? A 2 of clubs, a 5 of spades, a 7 of diamonds, an 8 of hearts, a jack of spades, a queen of clubs, a king of diamonds, etc., so that they weren't all the same suit. What are the odds of getting those 13 cards?
The same odds. It's very low.
Exactly the same odds. And the only difference between that one hand, which is a garbage hand in spades, or in euchre, or, well, not euchre, but in spades and bridge, the only difference is that we prioritize them. The bits of cardboard don't know anything. The math doesn't know anything. And so you have this incredibly unlikely outcome that is happening every single game. If you deal an entire deck out to 4 people, the odds of any 13 specific cards, be they 13 of the same suit or 13 nonsensical cards, or meaningless cards of the game, the odds are exactly the same, which means in every single game that has ever been played at bridge, every time the cards are dealt, there are 4 people that receive a hand of cards, and the odds against that specific hand is 1 in 158,753,389,900. And that's happening over and over and over again. And what you're doing is finding something that you view as specific, significant. Oh, here's 5 digits of pi. Ta-da! Oh, here's this thing that I attribute significance to. That's what you're doing when you go through and do this math. I highly recommend you watch Countdown. It's a great game.
And do you know what the top 11 most common numbers are?
Well, no, not offhand, no.
But you're gonna tell me.
1, 2, 0, 3, 5, 4, 10, 0, 0, 6, 8, and 7. You know, there's all kinds of mathematical analysis we can do on texts, but what does that mean? Just because something's against the odds doesn't mean it's not going to happen. I mean, the infinite monkey theorem still stands, right? If you give it an infinite number of monkeys and an infinite number of typewriters and an infinite amount of time, it'll eventually produce the works of Shakespeare. We know that this is true. So I don't know why, even if your math is correct, why that points to anything other than, oh, wow, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
So how do you get from your math to a God?
Well, the difference is because we're not looking in a billion different books. We're looking in the most read book in the world.
Doesn't matter.
First verse.
Doesn't matter.
And we're looking for the most common universal constant. So we're not looking in billion.
No, you're not.
We're looking at one.
No, if you say if in the first chapter you found pi, that would be significant, and if you found phi, that would also be significant, wouldn't it? So, how many different mathematically significant possible results could you go for?
And how many books have actually been written?
And part of it,
since humans started writing.
Yeah, and you have to also look at languages that. You know, there's not a proper letter numerical value for letters in English unless you do like the A to Z 1 to 26 type thing. But there are other things about this that are predictable because when you're looking at what is written, you are looking at something that already includes an intended pattern. Actually, it includes multiple intended patterns. The letters form the words that are there as a pattern. So, if I were to ask you, Alvin, pick a number between 1 and 10. Go ahead.
7.
Yes, and I have a 7 of diamonds, which was already here in my hand, because that is the single most common response to this. I can look like I can predict what's going. Legitimately, there's no other cards in my hand. 1 7 of diamonds, because I knew you were going to say 7, or did I? The truth is, I didn't know you were going to say 7, but it was a really, really, really strong likelihood, because when you ask someone to pick a number between 1 and 10, 7 is overwhelmingly the most common number chosen. And you could look like you're prescient, like you're a genius magician, etc., when really you're just playing the odds. And so I will look at your website on your patterns found in the Bible, but I have to say, you would be better off actually sending them to mathematicians if they pay any attention to you, because your particular version of the Bible code, it doesn't seem to be getting any traction. It seems to be just you.
Yeah, and I mean, So how do you get from, given all the books that have been written, including the ones we don't know about, right? Because they no longer exist because they're in the Library of Alexandria. They were books or scrolls that were in pagan temples in Italy, and Christians destroyed them, and other religions destroyed other religion stuff, and all that kind of stuff. How do you get to God from your from this? How do you get there? Just because it's against the odds doesn't mean it didn't happen naturally.
I know we've talked a lot.
You have to also look at the sub patterns.
Okay.
So the same question. The question hasn't changed. How do you get from this to God? And obviously, the odds of it happening are right now 100%, right? They did happen. We see something what you say is true. You see these patterns. What I'm wondering is, how do I get from, oh, look, these are interesting, to, oh, there's actually a God?
By the mathematics, because I've shown it to 579 digits.
So what?
And you also have
I'm accepting your math is true. Just because it's against the odds, obviously it happened. So, I mean, so what? It happened. How do you get to God from there?
Well, if you look at all the sub-patterns with pi e and alpha, it's a lot more than just pi. And it's in like the trillions that
Same question.
just that one pattern occurs.
Same question.
But because it's in one book, in one verse, in one universal constant.
How many books out of all of those that have been written have you done the same analysis to determine that this is unique?
Well, as an example, I looked at a number of classics. I looked at about 20,000 sentences and pseudo-sentences, and I was able to find like the first 12, that I was able to find a sentence that had the first 12 patterns.
So 20,000 sentences isn't even close to a large number. I said how many volumes, how many books, and what percentage of that is the total that have been written since then.
See,
well, out of the 20 million, I found one in 20 million.
20 million books?
Exactly what you'd expect.
20 million books.
Sentences.
I didn't ask about sentences.
Well,
I asked about books.
I'd look at it.
I asked how many books.
So, I have a question.
Oh, I don't know. It was like 100 books or something.
Oh, 100 books? I've read more than that in the last 5 years. I'd say the last 3 years, but I might be pushing it. So I'm not really impressed by 100 books.
See, the thing is, I'm looking at your thing here. And by the way, you have 100 patterns in Genesis 1:1 that you claim prove divine authorship in the Bible. If Genesis 1:1 didn't fit this pattern, Matthew 1:1 did, would you have accepted that?
Well, it wouldn't have been as impressive.
Why not?
Oh, this painting? Dude,
well,
I've been,
Genesis 1:1 is the very first verse.
I actually started this painting like 5 months ago, 4 months ago, or something like that. Man. But as far as like actual time into it, I done lost track now. I probably got maybe about 25 hours into this piece. The ones with the books are always the longest. It's so many straight lines, and then trying to get all the shadows and the lettering right. So I'm pretty sure I'll be on this one for another, I don't know, 30, 40 hours maybe. I'm looking to put about 60 hours into this piece, 75 hours, something like that. And I'm already getting, so I just finished a commission a couple days ago. And I'm already getting requests. Somebody sent me a photograph and everything. I sent them back a price, and then they said, well, I'll let you know by Thursday, which more than likely means I'm not gonna have it done. And that's okay. You can say that now. You don't have to come back and tell me that on Thursday. Cause I don't know. I've come to realize like if somebody submits a photograph for a painting and I give them a price, if they don't give me the deposit right then more than likely they're not gonna get it done. And that's cool too, you know what I'm saying? I don't be bugging about that shit. It's cool if you're not gonna get it done. It's no biggie. It's really not a big deal. You know? I just hate for people to think it is like, oh, I don't want to tell them like it's out of my price range or this and that or like it's all good, yo. Since I'm gonna since I'm gonna be out of work for a minute, I could definitely use some more commissions. Hmm. Why Why do I torture myself with painting these books? I'll never figure it out, yo. Facts, man. I just had an invite. I'll show you guys that. I put together like a little dorky video for like just a local little news outlet. But our Greater Chamber of Commerce is backing it, and another local organization is backing it, and it's just a spotlight about local businesses. And somebody reached out to me and said, "Hey, you should ask, can you be in the spotlight this month for your local business?" Well, somebody actually brought it to my attention. It was like, "Hey, these people told me that they want me to be on their business spotlight." And I said, "You know what? Maybe you should ask Travis Prince instead." So I'm like, okay. And so it's like people are like volunteering me to do stuff now, and it's like, so he was like, "Yeah, I told him about you instead, and I have an email to give you." And so I got the email, and I emailed the people, and I was like, such and such told me I should contact you about a business spotlight or something. And so they were really enthusiastic and said, "Yeah, we're just trying to give local small businesses a few minutes to highlight what they do in the community, and we would love for you to talk about a little bit about your art and your business." And they said they were going to give everybody they wanted everybody to record a 5 to 10 minute video and submit the videos. And then I don't know where it's going to air at, if it's going to play on like the Chamber of Commerce Twitter site, or I don't know. But I know it'll be out there somewhere in the digital world. So I did put that together yesterday. I'll let you guys watch that if you want real quick. It's really corny, but it is what it is. I'm definitely gonna need some more white paint on here. Some white and pink. And this book is just straight up yellow. Is that even wet? Oh, I painted that yesterday. I was going to say that looks like it's been painted. Alright, so that one is done. Yellow book, white book, pink book, white book. And then this one, yeah, so. And I use the white and the gray to straighten out this yellow. But this is basically a solid color right here. It doesn't have too many, well, maybe on the one edge. Closer to the bottom. All right. Yeah, painting these books are always like a really slow part of the painting, yeah. Just trying to get the lines to look straight and get the very subtle changes of light and shadow that are on the bookshelf. Okay, so more white paint. And then I can kind of I can straighten out this white line here and these three white lines. And then I need a pinkish color to straighten this out. And I'm almost done with that shelf. Like I say, after I just get the lines and the color straightened out, I'll let it dry and then I'll come back and start adding some letters to it. And of course, I'll do the main book in the front last. Yeah, tons of books on the shelves. And this one has books in it. Oh, yeah. I still think it's gonna be a pretty good paint when it's done. All my Reader series come out pretty good. Let's see if we can we even see on this thing? Don't look like it. Alright, so this is the video I made.
Hi, my name is Travis Prince. I'm a visual artist and the owner of Paintings by the Prince. I'm also the host of Electric City Television's Roundtable Discussions, which is a artist talk TV series, as well as being the executive creative director for the Black Scranton Project, which is a nonprofit organization dedicated towards archiving and celebrating Black history and culture of the Scranton, Pennsylvania region. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank Wilkes-Barre Connect for allowing me to formally introduce myself to the community. Hey guys, we're here in my home studio, and this is where I do all of my work. And over the past few years, get the plastic open. So it comes with 4 pieces, and here's a little picture of how it should look when it's finished. So you have 2 arms and 2 feet. You attach the arms at one end to the foot on this side, like so, and then attach the foot to the arms on the other end, and it just holds together with a friction lock. You don't need any glue or screws or anything, and once it's assembled, you're ready to use it. And like I say, the best thing about this system is if you have a wet brush that has blue paint on it, you can set it there and not necessarily need to clean it immediately if you're going to come back to that brush. You can have a brush with yellow paint and a brush with green paint, and hold up to 16 brushes if you want, and even store your brushes here when you're not using them when they're clean and dry. So I thought it was a good idea for me, and now it can be used by everyone out there. I'm currently selling this product on my Etsy page, which is Paintings by the Prince. And like always, you can find me on all social media, all platforms at Paintings by the Prince. Thanks, guys. Interviewing people for roundtable discussions is always a exciting event. I get to sit down and have in-depth conversations with local artists about their creative processes and their motivations and their inspirations. And it's always intriguing to be able to sit and actually talk with the artists and deconstruct their artwork, so you don't have to kind of wonder and interpret what the artist was trying to say or implement in their piece. But to sit down and have a real conversation with the artist is always an enjoyable thing for me. And today, our guest is Grace and Peace. How you doing?
I'm all right. I'm glad to be here.
Well, thank you for coming to chat with me, man.
No problem.
The first thing I always do with my guests is I want you to tell
I just got out of really tough circumstances, and I remember, getting off the plane in San Antonio, and it was the butterfly migration season.
Oh.
So there's thousands and thousands of white butterflies.
And being able to transfer that visually into your art so that the viewers can understand these same concepts, metaphors, ideas, I find it important. And someone told a story that he even paid for a really fancy meal by doodling on a napkin and said, there's your payment for my dinner tonight. So I wish I could just reach that level.
Penn State University, a master's in fine art from Marywood University. I am a K-5 art teacher at Neil Armstrong Elementary. And then I run a house painting business that's moving into the mural arts, which is called Northeast Art Project. And then I'm co-owner with my wife of Electric City Escape.
And in a very cohesive way, but you've managed to pull this thing off, and it looks very, very nice. I'm very, very impressed by this piece.
You say that. I've been painting for 40 years.
I'm a lover of art and literature. As you can see,
So I always try to implement some type of literature or educational material into my artwork because I feel it's important. And a couple of years ago, when I met Glennis Johns, the founder and CEO of the Black Scranton Project, she was doing a pop-up art event. And once she explained to me the event that she wanted to host and the workings of her project, the Black Scranton Project, I was totally on board 100% just because it aligns with a lot of the things that I feel are valuable and needed in our local community. And 2 years later, me and Glennis still work closely together, and I'm still currently a board member of the Black Scranton Project, and we continue to do phenomenal things for our community. And so, yeah. So I guess that's like a little teeny preview of myself. Really focused on my brush holder for about 3 minutes because it is a product that I can sell and make money off of. Everything else, you guys can just go to paintingsbytheprince.com or go to the blackscrantonproject.org and find us there.
The Hyundai Kona with driver attention. Not available on Chevy Trax, Honda HR-V, or Renegade.
Lease a Kona for $129 a month, or get 0% APR for 60 months, plus no payments for 90 days.
So you've decided. So first of all, you begin with Genesis 1:1. It's more impressive there because it's the first one, and then you begin with this notion that somewhere else in the Bible it says God's digits are 3 and 7, and 3 is for the Trinity, and 7 is for divine perfection. When there's no evidence of a Trinity, and no evidence for divine, and no evidence for divine perfection, and then you're like, here's part of your 100. The number of words in Genesis 1:1 is evenly divisible by 7. Big deal. That's true for every sentence that has 7 words. The number of letters is evenly divisible by 7. Sorry?
Yeah, well, that's one. The first one is 1 in 7.
No, it's not.
The first 28 are like 1 in 20 million or something.
No. You don't get to just so what are the odds that I would have been born in Kansas City, Missouri?
100%.
Well, like 1 in...
Now it's 100%. But you don't get to say it is unlikely that Matt was born in Kansas City, and unlikely that he was born on March 31st, and unlikely that he was born at this time, and unlikely that he was born in this year, and unlikely that he was born in these periods. You don't get to multiply those together to say that it was astronomically improbable that Matt would be born when he was born. That's what you're doing with this. You are butchering math, which is why nobody's paying attention to this. And even if you were correct, even if all of the things you say about Genesis 1:1 is correct, that still does not in any way demonstrate that it was authored by a God. In fact, if that were enough to conclude that God is the author of this, then that would be concrete evidence of God, in which case God could just come forward and say, yep, I authored it. So why is God still hiding? If you found God, you've sussed through Genesis 1:1 and you found proof of God, Why is God still absent and hiding? And why do you have to call around to try to get attention on a website that nobody's paying attention to? Why is God punking you?
Well, that's what the 20 verses at the beginning say, is that God's telling us that they're hidden.
If he's hidden, how come you found him and I can't?
Well, I'm not the only one that found him. I mean, I got some of them from other people.
I'm not convinced. How do I know that you found him? I have yet to see any evidence that somebody has found God. He's playing the best game of hide and seek ever.
Well, a lot of them came from Dr. Ivan Painter 150 years ago.
100 years ago, according to your website, unless your website's 50 years old or typoed. But since you misspelled atheist, maybe it is.
100 years ago.
Yeah, and you still haven't demonstrated, and like Matt pointed out, the odds of him being born on the day to the parents in the place are astronomically against, and yet 100% chance that it happened because it did. So this goes back to my question of let's assume your math is correct, how does that get you to anything? Because we've written enough books of varying lengths to include, because the Bible is a bunch of smaller books.
I need a mathematician. Because I just got down to the end of the list. Are you the one that added, like, the ones closer to 100? Like 99, 98, and 100?
Yeah, I did most of the latter ones.
Sure. So this latter one, you say Genesis 1:1 is found in phi. You do realize that phi is an irrational number that doesn't repeat, and so you'd be able to find, as a matter of fact, it would be more miraculous to not find the 7 words in Genesis 1:1 within the digits of phi than to actually find it, right?
Right, and same with pi.
But in every I've done the mathematics to show that it's improbable.
No, it's not improbable. It is
actually
no, sir. It is virtually certain. That is the point. If you were to start flipping a coin right now, how many heads in a row would you need to get before you thought something fishy was going on?
Oh, well, maybe 10 or so.
Sure. But if you flipped a coin over and over again 10 billion times, do you think you'd hit on 10 heads in a row at some point?
Oh, definitely, yes.
Definitely, thank you. So you do understand this, and that's why 10 heads, by the way, bigger. Not surprising at all that we find Genesis 1:1 in pi. Did you look to see if we could find Genesis 1:2 in pi? I bet you seem to put priority on this first. Yeah.
Do you think you could find the first sentence in Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit in pi?
You would not find all 100 type patterns, no.
No, you didn't ask that. I didn't ask that. I asked, do you think you would find the first sentence of The Hobbit in either pi or phi or any other irrational number?
If you look far enough, yes, because of
Oh! Congratulations. That's fine. So, I thank you for the call, Alvin. I have nothing more to say. It's interesting. I'll take a look at the website.
Math is weird.
You need to get some mathematicians to look at this, and it is what I thought it was from the beginning, which is another Bible code, just not an equidistant letter one. In this case, instead of looking for equidistant letters, you're saying, let's pull up every digit of pi, and I will scan through the entirety of it to see if I can find this particular string. Well, congratulations. Just like if we put every monkey on earth banging on typewriters ad nauseum until the end of time, they will write your Bible word for word.
What's a Shakespeare? Thanks. Talk to you later. Have a nice day.
Statistically, that's correct, yes.
Yeah, that's what statistics show.
Yeah, and drop it. Yeah, that's that's the problem.
I get it, because it seems people have done this forever, and the one that they most seem to be attached to is phi, the golden ratio. It's in my favorite cartoon of all time, Donald in Magic Land. And it goes through and it shows examples of how phi appears in nature, and how the golden ratio appears here, and how it's this plus this equals this, and it's 1.61809 or 3399 or whatever it is. We are pattern recognition machines. The problem is sometimes that pattern recognition goes into overdrive, which is what has happened with Alvin. Alvin, out of one verse, has found 100 different ways that it is significant, provided, and he's kind of correct, provided you begin by agreeing that the number 3 is significant, the number 7 is significant, that you are free to use specific combinations in mathematics, but not necessarily any mathematical combination. And every time you get to an answer that you deem significant, like pi, to 5 digits, you keep that and count it as a hit. And anytime you stumble across something that doesn't appear to have any significance, you get rid of that and count a miss. I mean, this is exactly what Alvin is doing.
Right, counting the hits and ignoring the misses, which doesn't work. And none of that gets you to God anyway, because you need to show that, okay, you have this fact, now how do you get to this? And he's only examined 100 books, which, let's face it, I mean, you have access to more than 100 for free on Google or, Amazon Kindle. So, and this is all just mathematical analysis, so a computer program could do it. The fact that you could do it with he's only done with 100 is even more unimpressive than if he's done it with like 10,000.
Let's see if we can try and get through. I mean, there's a bunch of theists waiting. We've only got like 25 minutes left on the show, so let's see who we can get through here. Who you got next?
RJ in Colorado, I think.
Sure.
All right, RJ in Colorado, welcome to the show.
Yeah, hi. Happy birthday.
Oh, thank you.
So I've called in a few times before, but I didn't think I was gonna get put on this quick. So I personally don't believe. I know you guys might believe it, but that Christianity has spread throughout the globe.
At the point of a sword, yep.
I think that's coincidence.
I'm sorry.
I think that. What's up?
You broke up. You're saying that you don't believe Christianity is spread through the globe?
No, I don't believe that it's dominated the globe. Well, in a lot of ways, it's dominated a lot of countries. I don't think that was coincidence. I think that there's a reason.
I don't think it was coincidence either. I think some people convinced other people, and those people convinced other people, and it spread that way. Just like it's not a coincidence.
Yeah, and in the early days of Rome, you could actually be put to death for not being a Christian, and that kind of helped solidify things. You had the Spanish conquistadors spreading across the world and spreading Christianity at the point of a sword. You had, Europe exploring the world, and Christianity was the most popular thing, and Christians were more than willing to kill people who didn't, and so forced their beliefs on large populations.
But I don't understand what the point is.
But, yeah, what's the point?
Well, okay, so, like, for instance, you brought up the conquistadors, the Aztecs, where I would say their paganistic religion was self-destructive when you compare that to the
I don't care.
How does that change my claim that they spread it at the point of a sword? So it's not that surprising that a technologically superior country, technologically superior society, spread their religion at the point of a sword.
No, it wasn't all spread, but at the point of the sword.
Nobody's saying it was all spread. So here's the thing, RJ.
Not all spread. A lot of the other tribes.
RJ.
RJ. You're not even letting me speak.
Correct. I'm trying to make. Yes, I'm interrupting for a point because I don't want you to waste my time or the listeners' time, because Christianity has spread. That is a fact. Version. It has spread through conquest.
No.
I will hang up on you if you keep doing this. It has spread, as a matter of fact, through coercion, through conquest, through convincing people.
Yeah.
I'm maintaining an amazing zen right now, RJ. I triple fucking dog dare you to try to interrupt me again to deny this. Go ahead. I dare you.
Okay, so now, wait, hold on just a second. So now, just...
Bye.
Yeah. So Christians gloss over this point, but you know, when Rome made Christianity the official religion, they also put a death penalty on not being Christian. Yep. They destroyed pagan temples of knowledge, because you didn't just go to a pagan temple to worship, you also went to a pagan temple to learn. That's where the universities, you know, what we would call universities today were. That's where cultural centers were, and so you destroyed a lot more than just a building or just more than just religion. You wiped out knowledge and culture and history and a lot of other things that human societies depend on when you did that. And that all happened at the point of the sword. This is simple fact.
Yeah, so this is what happens. You get a caller who's got a really weak ass point, and they want to portray that. And I not only granted their point, offered them supporting stuff, and did it with alliteration. That Christianity has spread by conquest, which is true, by coercion, which is true, and by convincing people, which is true. Some people have become convinced. Some people are indoctrinated. There's nothing remotely controversial about me saying these are the ways in which Christianity is spread. He wants to pretend that Christianity dominated the world and it's just not a coincidence because it's more likely that it's spread because it's true. And RJ, you should go talk to Muslims about that.
Yeah, because Muslims have done the same thing. Buddhism is probably the only religion that might be able to make the claim they did, and are of the top three. But even that. All right, so let's go to Kim in Oregon, who believes there's some evidence for God.
Cool.
Hi, Kim.
I hope it's good evidence, because I would agree if we're going to include testimony that there's anecdotal evidence. But what kind of good evidence do we have?
Right. So first off, I just want to say this is a new thing for me, so I apologize if I fall over myself. But yeah, so a friend of mine wanted me to call in. I don't usually do this, but I'm not a typical Christian. I don't buy into, I'd say, 80% of what Christianity pushes. Okay. But I do believe in the Bible. So
hang on. Yep. So I'm gonna let you continue, but there's two things I'm gonna be curious about. One is, what is the criteria for you determining which portions of a religion you accept and which portions you reject? But if you say you accept the Bible,
and that's where they get me too, is just like, oh, I'm a Christian, but I don't buy everything that Christianity tries to sell. And I don't believe in everything in the Bible. Then you shouldn't believe in any of it. If you gotta fucking pick and choose. If you gotta pick and choose which parts of this fucking book is good for you and which parts of it are not good for you, then it's like... And then his voice sounds kind of soft. He might be gay. And then faggots, they wanna believe in God and all that stuff, but they don't want to go to hell, and they don't want to believe that their God would condemn them to hell. And so they'll be like, well, I don't believe this part of the Bible and that part of the Bible, but I still believe Jesus Christ. And it's like, but really though, do you?
what does that mean? Does that mean you accept everything in the Bible?
Well, that gets into the weeds, right? Because that's what denominations become. I believe of the Bible.
Well, it has nothing to do with denominations. I mean, I'm saying the Bible legitimately says things that aren't true, and it also legitimately sanctions and allows things which aren't moral. So I just need to know what you mean when you say you believe the Bible, and which Bible.
Right, and you'll go, right, I get that. So I guess to the first, I can't agree with your first point, but I guess to the question of, do I believe in the Bible? I believe, first of all, I believe there's a God, right? And I have to go through that foundation.
It's still so hard to answer the question. And this is what I hate about theists and Christians. You ask them a direct question. So the Bible has bad stuff, corrupt stuff, and immoral stuff in it, and you believe in that. So which Bible do you believe in? And well, first of all,
Gets into very denominational.
Is all of your evidence biblical?
No.
Do you have any actual biblical evidence?
Right, so that's kind of what I hang on, because the Bible, like the
Go for it.
Ham and Bill Nye. Okay.
I'm happy. I just want to be clear, Kim. I'm happy for you to make whatever case you want to make. It's just that before you start down that track, be aware that I'm going to be asking what your methodology is that allows you to pick and choose what you want. And I want to know more about this, because if you say, I believe the Bible, I mean, that carries a lot. Like, do you believe the earth was created in 6 literal days? And do you believe it was 6 to 10,000 years ago? Are you okay with slavery? But if your primary goal is to show that you believe that there's a God, go ahead. What is your case for God?
Right. Okay. Yeah, and real quick on the cherry picking, I do believe that as people, kind of like what the show stands for, like that's why I kind of appreciate you guys being so objective and willing to talk to anybody, because Christians aren't like that. They don't want to bring up any other belief typically, and I think that's kind of what we all have to do. So I do look at the Bible and I have to cherry pick. Not to say this part is not true in that part, but I have to determine, first of all, is the Bible true, and what out of all the other books. But so regardless of the Bible, that's getting in the weeds, because we have to even establish that we believe the Bible's true, which we're going to pretend like we're not there yet. So I would say, just from history, you find an island full of pagans. Typically, the first response is there is something, right? That is
No, sir. No, Kim. Have you not heard of the Piraha? You haven't heard of the Piraha?
I'm just saying the majority of civilizations.
Okay, I don't know what the majority has to do with anything, because in order for something to be true, and you want to try to use the fact, basically right now you're arguing that pretty much everybody has some sort of gut feeling or impression or leans towards the notion that there is a God, and that's just not true.
Right, I would say feeling.
And even to the extent,
I don't have any gut feelings towards any of this.
Well, even to the extent that it's true, that people feel a certain way, that is independent of whether or not it's actually true. The Piraha are a tribe, I believe, in the Amazon, where Christian missionaries went to engage with them. They didn't even have a God concept at all. They were baffled. And by the way, the Christian missionary who went down there is no longer a Christian. The Piraha are a prime example that, despite what people want to claim, not everybody, not every culture, has a God belief.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I didn't know about them, but I would believe there'd be some exceptions to that. That's not my basis. So I'm sorry I brought that up.
I get it. No, just what's the case for God?
Okay, so I would say just if I came on an island and I saw the law, or even if I didn't know about the law of entropy, I would deduce that symmetrical flowers, or my 2 eyeballs not being a little off center, or there being some sort of purpose that's actually working, that species can't intersect and create new babies that are freaks, that there's something going on, that there are walls and boundaries and rules, almost like a program, that is making everything function to a certain extent, which screams design to just...
No, sir.
Even if I didn't have anyone tell me.
It doesn't scream design.
It doesn't scream design. The fact that there's order in the universe doesn't mean that the order was intended. The fact that there are mechanical processes doesn't mean that those mechanical processes were the result of a decision by a thinking agent. There's nothing about chemistry.
On its own, it doesn't.
On its own. What else are you adding to it? What else are you adding to it? Because it seems that what you're adding to it is a God.
No, what I'm adding is the law that I can observe every day, which is the law of entropy. Which, and my room's a mess right now, and
your room being a mess has absolutely nothing to do with the law of entropy. Nothing.
Well, can I get
the second law of thermodynamics states that the total energy in an isolated system can never decrease over time and is constant if and only if all processes are reversible. Isolated systems spontaneously evolve towards thermodynamic equilibrium this state with maximum entropy.
You
So how do you get to that by observing?
Well, I don't. Let's say I didn't know that law at all. I don't care what they determine it. I'm just saying off the observation as a person.
That was my question.
The last
How do you just by observation get to that?
Get to the law of entropy is true.
How do you get to that from just observation? That is the question.
Right. So that's what I was kind of basing on, is that any chance, there is, if I shake, something in a bottle, it's broken up.
That's a closed system.
I would never bet that it would ever. Yeah, let's say it's a closed system in a jar.
Kim, you're missing this. You said that you could observe it every day by looking at your messy room, which has absolutely nothing to do with entropy. Then when asked, you talked about shaking a snow globe type thing or some other sort of closed system. But do you think that scientists, when they were sorting out the laws of thermodynamics, did it just by observation? That they looked at a snow globe and said, yep, here's a law of nature. By the way, you shake up a snow globe, it doesn't trend toward chaos. It trends toward stability. All of those little snowflakes in there trend toward, boom, stopping.
Right. And you don't have closed systems. If we go back to your wandering onto an island without knowing the laws of thermodynamics, that island is not a closed system. It is, in fact, open because it's getting energy from the sun. So it's not a closed system. Your snow globe is not a closed system.
Because you're shaking it from outside.
And it's also gaining energy from, if it's outside the sun, if it's inside, then it's picking up and exchanging energy with your air-conditioned house or wherever it happens to be. That is still not a closed system. So in order to say that you have to, that in an isolated system, isn't the first thing you have to do is figure out how to isolate a system?
Right. Well, this is just one of the pieces, right? I mean, I'm just, as if we're in a courtroom.
That's not an answer to the question.
Point. Right.
Is it the first step to say...
There's no point to get to.
Yeah. The second law of thermodynamics states that the total entropy of an isolated system can never decrease over time. Wouldn't the first step to proving that part of the definition correct to create an isolated system?
I mean, you'd have to create an isolated system and a non-isolated system and compare the results at a minimum.
Right. So how do you do that? How do you create an isolated system? By just observation, by sailing onto a deserted island. How do you do that using your example?
Right. No, that's fair. I mean, I would say that the universe, closed system, open system, to me, just for one, even in that same instance, you can't prove evolution, right? We can't observe evolution happening.
Where did we get evolution from?
What the hell are you talking about?
We're talking about the second law of thermodynamics. You're bringing up evolution completely out of the blue? Come on.
This all builds on that because that's my belief of a God.
We're talking about your second law of thermodynamics. How do you get there by just observing?
You're saying your belief in a God has something to do with not being able... Second law of thermodynamics not being compatible with evolution? What?
Well, I don't care about the law of thermodynamics. I'm just saying that's what they call it.
Then why did we spend all this time? I promise you, I'm trying to maintain my zen, and Jim's going to lose his long before I am. Why the fuck did we spend all this time talking about the second law of thermodynamics only for you to say you don't care about it?
Right. And so first of all, we don't even know if the universe is a closed system. However, it may be. Right. But what we do know is that our planet is not a closed system because it gets energy from the sun. And so when you look at any system, even a closed one, there could be areas that act like a closed system and areas that don't, as the energy transfers and moves, because it doesn't necessarily move at the same rate. So the second law of thermodynamics does not prove God, right? It doesn't prove that evolution is not possible because the planet on which evolution is happening, that we know of for sure, ours, is not a closed system. It's getting energy from the the sun, at least energy from the sun. Less energy from other places, maybe depending on how you want to look at it, but definitely not that. So this is the second law of thermodynamics. This is what we're talking about. I don't understand, and let's go back to what your original statement was, which was, if you sailed onto an island, you could determine the second law of thermodynamics. And I'm saying you can't prove that you can do that just by being on a deserted island. How do you do that? Because that's what your claim was. That's what we're talking about. Let's leave evolution completely out of this.
Okay. Okay, so that's fair. I would say that my observation would be disorder is the natural flow of things, unless a lot of energy comes from a design
How do you determine that?
Thinking person.
How do you determine that?
So that was kind of
Whoa, hang on. Did you just say unless energy comes from a thinking person?
Unless some energy comes from a purposeful or forward-thinking person. Energy.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but all of the scientific models about energy have nothing at all to do with whether or not that energy comes from a thinking agent. Energy doesn't need to come from a thinking agent. It could be a function of
I agree.
A thermodynamics. So why did you bring it up? Every single time. It's like you... Hang on.
To get order.
Hang on. It's like you spew forth something that you hope makes sense, and then when Jim and I, that's a good thing, point out that it doesn't work that way, then you diverge and go off somewhere else. We've gone from the second law of thermodynamics to a brief interlude about evolution, and now we're talking about energy needs to be added by a thinking being. You don't seem to have any sort of real foundation in how reality works, and yet it seems like you're trying to make use of science to prove something that science cannot prove. Science can't prove God. There's nothing within science.
Science can't prove God.
Good. So, thank you, Kim. If science can't prove God, why the fuck are you talking about science when we asked you about God?
Well, I'd argue it's the same for we can't prove evolution. Right.
We have proved evolution. Evolution is an observable fact. Evolution is an observed fact. The theory of evolution by means of natural selection is
there's more evidence for evolution than there is for gravity.
But in any case, it doesn't matter. Evolution is irrelevant. Even if we couldn't prove evolution at all, you came in to tell us why you believe in God. You spend all this time on science, and then you wind up agreeing that science can't prove God. So why are you wasting our time?
I don't mean to waste your time. I was trying to build my premise on my observation.
Yo, what's up, guys?
Right, and we immediately jumped on your first mistake, which was second law of thermodynamics.
But you can't come to it naturally. You can't prove God through science, which you already agreed with. So what was the point?
Well, if we're going to go into proving, I would say that the whole point of going to believe in God, if he proved himself, then there'd be no point to faith.
Okay. Now you have demonstrated that your entire God proposition is useless and worthless.
Yeah,
because basically you're now in the position of saying that you believe something, and while most people would look at it and say there's not enough evidence, your new claim is if there was enough evidence, then that would prove that it wasn't true. But since there's not enough evidence, that makes it all the more true. I mean, that's just bizarre.
Yeah.
You should write down your model. You should write down your model and see how many other gods and supernatural things you would have to accept if we went with your model.
And also do yourself a favor and actually study the entire second law of thermodynamics in detail and don't just read answers in Genesis. Thank you very much for your call. I hope that helps. Have a nice day.
Somebody in chat was like, Matt's gonna pop, and I'm like, I've been as mellow as I'm nowhere near popping.
I did.
I'm barely not even bothered by this.
Well, it's the same argument. We've done the second law of thermodynamics on a number of occasions, and it doesn't get any better than that. So
we've got one last call, right?
Yeah, we got one last call, and that last call is David in California. Hey, you're on. You want to talk about the Bible is scientifically accurate, specifically Genesis 1?
What's really I'm eager for us to get to what David has to say. But David, let me ask you at the beginning, did you hear the last call?
Yes, I did.
The last caller said that you cannot use science to prove God. Do you agree with the last caller?
I'm not trying to prove God. I'm trying to prove the Bible is correct in its order.
Okay. The Bible, okay. So you're trying to prove the Bible is correct in its order. What order?
Well, in Genesis 1, they were supposed to write that down.
Oh, okay.
I'm saying that science itself verifies the order of Genesis 1 as being correct.
Except that I'm sitting here, I'm looking at the same page that I've looked at for a gazillion years. So if we just go to the index of creationist claims at talkorigins.org, the creation account just one lists 10 major events in this order. A beginning, a primitive earth in darkness and enshrouded in heavy gases and water. Light, an expanse or atmosphere, large areas of dry land plants, the sun, the moon, and the stars, sea monsters and living creatures, wild and tame beasts, and then man. However, the real order is a beginning, and then light. By the way, light is third in the biblical one, but second here. Then the sun and stars, which is number 7 in the biblical order. Then comes the primitive earth, moon, and atmosphere in number 4, whereas the primitive earth is listed number 2 in the Bible. Dry land, sea creatures, etc. So the order listed in Genesis does not match the order as identified under scientific inquiry.
Well, I'm postulating that it does.
Okay, well,
cool. Okay, first of all, which cosmology are you doing? Because Matt just read, I believe, from the standard Big Bang cosmology of what the order was. So what are you using?
I'm using the cosmology of David.
The cosmology,
the cosmology of David. And your degrees are what?
I don't have any college degrees. I got about
I don't care about that either.
College.
And your expertise is what?
I'm not a scientist. I am not a scientist, but I have 2 years of physics and air conditioning and refrigeration, and I took astronomy.
I'm not concerned about that. I'd like for you to tell me, what is the cosmology of David? And if your case is that Genesis got the order right, comparing it to something other than the scientific order isn't going to get you anywhere. You do realize that, right? Like, do you believe?
No, I don't think you make statements all the time like that, Matt. That science is definitely correct, and if you deviate,
no, sir. That is an absolute fucking lie. I am on record in countless shows of saying, A, science does not make proclamations of truth or certainty. Science gives us the best models based on the best current information. It is tentative and subject to revision at all time. How dare you accuse me of something that I have not said?
Okay, well, that's the same thing Hitler said. He said,
all right, we're done. I tell you what, go ahead and hang up on him. I'm going to maintain my mellow because anybody so stupid in the last few seconds to try to say they're going to use the cosmology of David, and when I point out an honest response to an accusation of something I said, and for the caller to say, well, that's what Hitler said, there's nothing for me to get upset about or mad because you escorted yourself out.
Yeah.
You disqualified yourself. You
pretty
proved
good,
your
pretty
own
good.
argument. You were just calling in to hear yourself talk, and I'm glad that you got to hear yourself talk. I hope that some.
Hold on. Is that better?
That's better.
Okay.
Okay, how's it going? How are you feeling?
In pain, but I'm on the other side of recovery now, so I don't know. It's whatever they gave me. It's oxycodone, but it doesn't like take away the pain. I don't know. So I really haven't been taking it because it doesn't really do anything. But I take the doctor said 2 aspirin a day to help mitigate blood clots. So I do that, and other than that, I'm just keeping it elevated and just trying to just bear through it. And the surgery was just a couple days ago, so I figured maybe in a week or so it'll be a lot less intense. Yeah, the doctor mentioned that. She said the Achilles tendon cannot take a joke, and once it's damaged, it doesn't play fair anymore. Yeah, so it was. Yeah. Hmm. Wow. And that's what they said. Is she? I don't know. She said you could just let it heal without surgery, but I'm like, well, if the tendon is torn, like how would you? And she's like, well, you can't make a full recovery that way. The only way to make a full recovery is to suture it back together. And I'm like, well, I want to make a full recovery, so. But yeah, I want all the mobility. And if I have to just endure this, for a couple weeks, then I'd rather do it this way. And like I said, I don't want to have to worry about, like the slightest thing I do will cause a injury to it again. I want to just be normal and not think about it too much. But this, okay, okay. And I remember you saying that you we're gonna apply my vacation time to this pay period. Do I need to do that? Do I need to like log on and do it myself, or can you and Marcy handle that part? Yeah, yeah. So I should have started that one. Okay. Okay. That'd be great. Mm, yeah. So I do have my work laptop here. I just gotta remember my code. I know my password, but I think I remember my code for it. Um, yes. Mhm. Mhm. Okay. All right. I'll get on that shortly. Oh man. I really appreciate you calling too, Renee, and checking up on me. I definitely will. I definitely will. You have a good day. Bye. And that was
is my job calling? So I gotta try to do my time sheets. And at least I did let them know, like, I do have my work laptop here with me, so don't be looking for that shit at work, yo. This laptop is so nice. Soon as they issued it to me, I was like, what's this for? Oh, just in case we gotta work from home. Oh, then I need to take it home then. So I already have it there, just in case I need to work from home. This Jones stays here. But we ordered, like, everybody got new laptops, y'all. Everybody. And they're these new as HP Jones. Jones, nice, son.
Somebody gets you a bouquet of flowers, maybe a nice meal, some chocolates or something, because it's clear that you need attention and affection, just like, somebody who's been abandoned by reason and a family. I'm sorry that your day is so bad that you decided to compare me to Hitler because of Genesis 1 and science.
Yeah. And if you're going to come up with your own cosmology, at least say, I have been studying cosmologies for the last 20 years or my entire life, or it's been a hobby of mine. I would accept that you might actually, have something interesting. But if you don't say that, then I don't know how you could say anything interesting, because you don't really have a grasp on the basics of what those things even are. So, okay.
I'm going to steal, because I also mentioned 8 out of 10 Cats Does Countdown, I'm going to steal blatantly and give credit to Jimmy Carr for one of my favorite jokes ever, which is, say what you want about Hitler, he killed Hitler.
This is true. That is true.
That is one of my all-time favorite jokes from Jimmy. Jim, thanks so much. This has been grand, and
absolutely.
I hope you had a wonderful birthday. Thanks for steering.
Yeah, you're welcome. We had fun.
Anybody who thinks I was remotely, riled up, can go fuck themselves, because I sat here patiently through all it. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I waited through a whole episode just to do that for fun.
Yeah. I get it. Oh, boy.
We greatly appreciate all of you who have tuned into the show and been supportive over all these years. We're going to continue to keep doing this and all the other shows. Thank you so much for the donations that came in today. A good chunk of that is going to be going to help get bus passes to homeless people and more. I want to also thank the crew once again, if we can get them up there, because especially, I'm going to single one out. I'm going to single Katie out, because Katie has been steering the call screeners and came to me and was like, hey, is there a way that we can make the call screening work out better? And we came up with a marking system, and everybody's using it, and it has been useful and helpful. And that's because Katie is wonderful and not lazy like me. I would just show up and randomly take calls for an hour and a half and go home.
Yeah.
But we're very appreciative.
And that was actually very helpful in picking the last few callers when we got into crunch time. So I definitely appreciated that as well.
And the last people to thank are the moderators over in the YouTube chat. Thank you to everyone who did not make their life difficult. These are volunteers who are doing wonderful things and trying to make sure that we can have a good show and good conversations. We love and appreciate all of you. I hope to see you next week. Thanks for tuning in. Please be safe, and do not forget to vote if you are eligible to vote. Thank you. See you next week.
What will it take for you to start opening your eyes? Stop questioning the bullshit everyone around you buys. It's checking out your business, what goes on between my thighs. I wonder when they'll be rid of your eyes.
What are we doing, man? What are we doing?
Raymore and Flanagan has the solution for your best sleep yet. Get a free adjustable base with the purchase of select mattresses. Plus, with free next-day delivery, you'll be sleeping better tomorrow night. Shop now at Raymore and Flanagan.
I gotta take a bathroom break. going to the bathroom is just like, it's so hard. It's so hard to take a piss. All right. Yo, they're banning some books, yo. Yo. That's why I tell motherfuckers, man, you better buy books, yo, cause yeah, they gonna keep getting rid of all this shit. So these are some of the books they banned in 2020. The Hunger Games, Animal Farm, The Great Gatsby, Speak, The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks, Catcher in the Rye, The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, 13 Reasons Why, The Handmaid's Tale, 1984, The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian, The Glass Castle, The Perks of Being a Wallflower, Harry Potter, Anne Frank, Diary of a Young Girl, All the Bright Places, Looking for Alaska, The Hate You Gave, Brave New World, Kite Runner, Lord of the Flies, Fahrenheit 451, Drama, A Light in the Attic, The Outsiders, The Lorax. Like, how are you banning? My God. A Light in the Attic, Shel Silverstein, A Book of Poetry. And then you're banning Fahrenheit 451, which describes the situation that you're actually building. It is such irony. It is such irony. Fahrenheit 451, a book about a future where books are banned. And you're banning this book that tells about a future where people are going to ban books. The irony is just so juicy. It's so sweet in there. Like, you can just taste it. We're gonna ban this book that tells about a future that we will one day ban books. Oh, damn. But, oh well. We all caught in a goddamn matrix. Alright.
Can we achieve faster than light travel? That's the big question, isn't it? It is important, though. Throughout the history of sci-fi, it's been explored many times, but usually never backed up as to how it could happen. That was usually glanced over. And faster than light travel is something we want. Warping it many times the
Alright, let
speed
me
of
try to
light
work on this piece for
our
another
universe. It's
30 minutes.
especially
I get hungry. I gotta get something to eat soon.
Unfortunately, there have never been very many ways to do it according to known physics. In fact, it's almost hostile to the idea. Breaking the speed of light within Einstein's relativity, the best description of the universe at large that we have, would require infinite energy. Infinite energy isn't possible. Or is there another way? Is there a way to essentially hack the universe and move at speeds so fast that science fiction generally didn't imagine until science itself actually did? My guest today explored just such a concept after watching an episode of Star Trek and thinking about how a warp field could be established that would allow faster than light travel. It's just an idea consistent with relativity. There's no guarantee it would actually work, but it's one that so far has stood the test of time. People still wonder about this idea over 20 years after its formulation. As I said, it's consistent with relativity, but with caveats, pretty big ones. But it's important to explore the idea nonetheless. After all, if we respond to all ideas as inherently impossible, we'd have never gotten very far as a civilization. So, can we actually travel faster than light?
to Event Horizon with John Michael Godier. Joining John in this episode is theoretical physicist Dr. Miguel Alcubierre. Dr. Alcubierre received his PhD in 1994 through the study of numerical general relativity and has since worked at the Max Planck Institute for Gravitational Physics in Potsdam, Germany, and the National Autonomous University of Mexico. Dr. Alcubierre is best known for his 1994 paper, The Warp Drive, Hyperfast Travel Within General Relativity, where he describes his theory for traveling faster than light with what's become known as the Alcubierre Warp Drive.
Welcome everyone to Event Horizon with me, John Michael Godier. If you enjoy what you hear, fall into the Event Horizon, hit the like button, and become an active subscriber by ringing the bell. Miguel Alcubierre, welcome to the program.
Hi, hello.
Doctor, everybody knows you for your warp bubble concept, but you've done a lot of science. That was 1994. You've done a lot of science since then. What does your work focus on these days?
Well, on these days I've been working on black hole formation and also on something a little bit esoteric that we call boson stars, which is a model for a star made of a special kind of field that could mimic a black hole in many circumstances. So I've been specializing in that area. And my work is mostly numerical simulations. So for a long time I've been doing numerical simulations of black hole spacetimes, formation of black holes, collapse of stars, and also gravitational waves, production of gravitational waves. So that's my main work. And I've been working on that for the last 20-odd years.
We recently detected with the LIGO experiment the formation of, or the coalescing of two neutron stars. And I suppose that would be even more applicable to black holes if you have a binary black hole that's merging. Now, do you study that?
I've studied binary black hole formation, collision of binary black holes, not so much neutron stars. Neutron stars are difficult for different reasons because they have a lot of matter and you have to do fluid dynamics and maybe magnetic fields and things like that. Black holes are cleaner. And I've been studying black holes for a long time. So during the 90s and even early part of the 2000s, my main work was black hole simulations of black holes that collide in an in-spiral. They're orbiting and then they do an in-spiral collision. And that was actually the first thing detected by LIGO. 3 years ago, they detected the first gravitational wave detection ever was a collision of two black holes, which is exactly the problem I have been working for a long time.
Now, when black holes merge, collide like that, how long does that process take before they become entangled and gravitationally and they actually collide?
Depends very much on how they formed, but it could take tens of millions of years. It's a very, very long process. It's very slow. They approach each other very slowly because they're emitting very low gravitational waves, energy. They're losing energy in gravitational waves, but it's very, very slow. And those gravitational waves, in principle, cannot be detected because they're extremely weak. But this process takes millions and millions of years. But eventually they get to the point in which they're very, very close, and they're separated just by a few times their own radius. And at that point, the whole process can take just fractions of a second. And that's what we detect. So the detection of gravitational waves from a black hole collision typically only detects less than a second, the last fraction of a second of a collision. That's what we can detect. And the first detection, actually, the whole thing lasted for about 20 parts of a second, so 1/20th of a second or something like that. It was really very, very close. Neutron stars actually take longer, so when two neutron stars collide, we can detect the last minute or so of the collision. And that's because they're usually closer by, and so the signal is stronger, and it's also more in the range of the detector, so we can detect for longer. But black holes is a very, very fast process what we can detect.
So when you have two incredibly dense objects, like two black holes or two neutron stars for that matter, this has to be a ridiculously abnormal environment. Do you see things like, so you create gravitational waves, but what other radiation comes out of that? Do you see like this perhaps a solution to something like fast radio bursts, where you just see this mysterious burst of radiation that comes out of nowhere. Could that be from these kinds of mergers?
That's exactly what we think. Not from black holes. When two black holes merge, then nothing else happens. It's only gravitational waves, because black holes are vacuum. They have no matter. The matter has all been concentrated in the center, and the center is beyond the horizon, so it cannot, nothing that happens inside the black hole can affect us, and no radiation comes out from there. So when two black holes collide, all you get is gravitational waves. But when two neutron stars collide, that's very different, because neutrons are made of matter, they're made of fluids. And they have magnetic fields and etc. So when two neutron stars collide, essentially you get fireworks. You get a huge explosion, and this explosion produces radiation in all wavelengths. And in principle, yes, we believe that part of the gamma ray bursts that have been detected for the last 20 or 30 years by satellites come from collisions of neutron stars. There are actually two different types of gamma ray bursts, what we call the long-lived and the short-lived. And we believe that the short-lived are mainly caused by collisions of neutron stars. The long-lived, we're still not sure, but the short-lived are probably almost always the collision of two neutron stars. And this is extremely interesting, because if we can get the information from the collision of two neutron stars with gravitational waves, and also we can detect them also with gamma rays and other things, then we can learn a lot about the system. We can even do cosmology. So these types of systems are far more interesting. At the moment, there's only one confirmed detection of a collision of two neutron stars from LIGO, from gravitational waves. That was just over a year and a half ago. And there hasn't been another announced, but maybe they've seen something in the last few weeks and they're a bit cautious about announcing it. There might be some hints about it, but those are the extremely interesting systems. Collisions of stars give us a lot more information about the universe.
Now, is that due to the fact that nothing can escape a black hole's event horizon? So if you have two black holes coalescing and falling into each other and becoming a single black hole, you can't get anything except gravitational waves, because nothing can escape the black holes. So you can't get any kind of radiation other than, I guess, maybe some kind of Hawking radiation off it. So is that the case, that they're just simply...
That's exactly the case. When two black holes collide, there's nothing else there. It's just two black holes. Nothing can escape from inside the black hole, so there's no light, there's no radiation of any kind. The only thing you get are gravitational waves. So in that sense, it's a very clean system, but it's also, you can only detect it on gravitational waves and nothing else. Even the Hawking radiation is a concept that is theoretically very well understood, but we've never seen evidence of that, because for a black hole the size of a star or bigger, which is the ones we've seen, the Hawking radiation is completely negligible. It can just be ignored completely. There's no hope of detecting it. So what you detect is just the gravitational waves coming from the collision. Still, that's very interesting. That was the first system we saw, and we've seen about 10, maybe a lot more now, because LIGO's already taking data again. But until the beginning of this year, we've seen about 10 collisions of black holes with LIGO. When I say seen, I actually mean observed with gravitational waves, not with light. But so that happens sufficiently often that we see them a lot. Collisions of neutron stars are not that easy to see, because if they happen very far away, you can't see them because the signal is very weak. They have to happen very close by, so you might be able to detect them. But black holes you can detect very far away because they're usually bigger, and that means that the signal in gravitational waves is much stronger. But that's all you get. So you get the gravitational wave, you know it was two black holes. You can measure the distance because of the gravitational waves, and you can get the mass of the black holes, and maybe, if we're lucky, even how fast they were rotating. But it's very difficult to know exactly where they were. So we cannot pinpoint the galaxy in which the black holes collided, because there's no light coming out of the system, and the gravitational wave doesn't allow you to locate this in space very well. So we can sort of say it came from that region in space, but we don't know exactly where. Whereas with neutron stars, it's much more different, because if you see the light, then you can pinpoint the galaxy exactly.
What would the Hawking radiation of a black hole look like? Would it be gamma rays?
Well, yeah. Hawking radiation is, as I mentioned, is a theoretical idea that came from Hawking in the 70s. It still has not been confirmed observationally or experimentally. But basically, Hawking radiation is just what we call black body radiation. Now, a black body is not the same as a black hole. A black body is just physicist terms of saying something hot. So we call it a black body because it absorbs everything that falls into it, and then emits the light back as just heat. So the sun, even though it's not black, it's yellow. but it's a very good approximation to a black body in physics terms. It's just something that emits light because of its hot. It is hot. And depending on how hot it is, it emits light in different wavelengths. So if it's not very hot, you can't see it. If it's a little bit hotter, you see it red, and hotter still than yellow. And if it's very hot, you see it blue. Now, black holes emit radiation just like this, a black body radiation. But the temperature of a black hole is inverse to its mass. That means that very large black holes are essentially very cold and emit very little radiation, and radiation you cannot see with normal light. It would come in radio waves. So for a black hole the mass of a star, the Hawking radiation would come in the very, very far radio waves, and it would be so weak that we wouldn't be able to detect it at all. If the black hole was very small, and when I mean very small, about the size of an atom or something like that, I mean really small, with the mass of a few atoms, then it would emit radiation very, very hot, and it would come out in gamma rays, probably. But we haven't seen that. It's very difficult to detect. So there's no proof yet, observational proof, that Hawking radiation exists. It's just a theoretical idea.
Now, to get into the concept of a star drive that you could use a black hole to drive, the smaller the black hole, the more radiation it emits, right?
Yes, that's correct.
So if you saw, I mean, could there be like a Topos signature there, as they say within astrobiology, a Topos signature? Would an artificial, very small black hole, low mass, would that as something that you could say that is an alien star drive driven by a micro black hole?
Not really, because the process would be it's very fast. So a very small black hole would emit Hawking radiation so fast that it would evaporate very quickly, and what you would see essentially is probably something more like an explosion, a burst of gamma rays. So some people have actually speculated that gamma ray black holes evaporating, but the idea doesn't fit very well. But you see some sort of burst of black holes evaporate. As it emits radiation, it loses mass, and the smaller it is, the faster this goes. So a very small black hole would evaporate very quickly in a matter of seconds. So you wouldn't see something that's just emitting Hawking radiation for a long time. You would see a burst of radiation.
Alright, I'm gonna go have some breakfast. And I'll probably be up here later this afternoon. Peace.